What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. This is part 10 of the Build a Instagram App series. In the last part, we continued and built all of this profile stuff out. We're going to pick up where we left off. Make sure you destroy the like button, hit subscribe, get Xcode ready, and let's continue on. So we have another header in here that was orange before. Let's quickly go ahead and start designing that. So that's actually this file that we've got open here, which is the profile tabs collection reusable view. So in here, we simply actually want two buttons, and one of them is going to represent the grid, and one is going to be a tag for posts that the current user is tagged in. So I'm going to call this grid button. It's going to be a UI button. And hopefully autocomplete doesn't be slow so we can get through a decent amount in this video. So let's go ahead and create this. We're going to return this guy. We're going to say clips to bounds. We're going to set a tint color. And the tint color of this by default is going to be system blue. And let's see, we also want to set an image to it. So we're going to say the default background image rather is going to be a UI image named, and we're going to use something rather than SF symbols. So we want system name, and this is going to be for normal. And let me go ahead and open up SF symbols here, which you can download from Apple's website. And we want to find a grid image. And the one I want by default is this one, square.grid.2x2. When the user selects it, we'll change it to the filled version. So let's see, I think I can copy and paste this by doing a Command-Shift-C. That'll actually copy the name of it there so we don't have to type it out. Perfect. So that does that. And let's go ahead and copy this. And we're going to change this one to be tagged button. And I think there is simply an image called tag. We'll find out if I was right about that. This tint color by default is going to be system, we're going to say secondary system background. We'll see what that looks like since this one will be dull by default. And let's see, what else do we want on here? We should probably add these to the view. So we're going to say add subview, and there's going to be the tag button. And we also want to add the other button, which, what did I call it? Grid button. So go ahead and add that. We're going to go ahead and also override layout subviews so we can properly set frames for each of these guys. And another thing we're going to want to do is add actions. So when these buttons are tabbed, something needs to happen. So we're going to leverage a delegate similar to what we took a look at in the last video to relay that event to the view controller. So I'm going to go ahead and create a delegate here of type any object. And in here, we're going to basically say did tab grid button. Let's call it did tab grid button tab since we use this tab naming convention, which maybe wasn't the greatest idea, but too late now. And we're going to make this one did tab tagged button tab. And on here, we're going to have a public weak var of delegate. And this is going to be our type. So we're just going to copy and paste that here and make that optional. And let's see, so now we can add actions. So we can say grid button add target self selector is did tap grid button. This one is going to be touch up inside, same as the other one, which is a simple tap. Go ahead and copy and paste it. And let's change this to tagged. And this one, we want to actually create these. We'll fix that alignment in just a second. So annotate it, Objective-C, and make it a private function. And go ahead and paste this because we want one more for the tagged. And this one is going to be tagged. And then make sure you change it here as well for the tagged button. Control-I to align. Looks like we messed that up. Make sure you got your parentheses correct. And in here, we can simply say delegate did tab grid button tab. And delegate did tap tagged button tab. And let's lay out these frames and let's see what it looks like. So these buttons should be squares. So I'm going to first get a size, which is going to be the width and height for each button. So we're going to say the size is the current height subtracting 3, or subtracting 4. So 2-point buffer on the top and bottom. So let's see. So now we want to lay out the tagged button dot frame. And essentially what we want to do here, let's go ahead and close SF symbols. We want to divide this by half and then put one button here in the center of one half and one button in the center of the other half. So let's do some quick off the cuff math. So this is going to be a CG rect with a frame. This actually should be a CG rect with an X and Y. There we go. So the Y is simply going to be 2. Width and height are size and size. And the one that's tricky, whoops, let's make this align properly. The one that's a little more, we got to think about is the X position. So let's see, we should first get half the width of this current container. So we're going to say half width is width over 2. And we should basically also say we want to get half the width, and then we're going to subtract from this the size of the button, and then we're going to divide that by 2. And if my math is correct, that should hopefully give us the correct position here. And let's see, we're going to copy and paste this. And for the other button, and this one should be grid button actually, that's going to be in the left. This one is simply going to be, whoops, half width. This is kind of misleading. So we're going to say, let's call this grid X or grid button X. Whoops, make that there. Let's fix this alignment before it drives me nuts. This is going to be grid button X, and we're just going to add half the width of the current container view. And let's see what this looks like. So go ahead and hit Command B. Should be compiling. If I didn't screw anything up, let's go ahead and run it. Let's see if we've got that those buttons showing up. All right, perfect. Kind of large. I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe we should add some more padding to the top and bottom. Right now, clicking on them, nothing happens. It should change the highlight, of course, of the button, and this is super, super light. So what I'm going to actually do is change the background color here to be a light gray, and we'll see what that looks like. And let's also change that padding here. So one good approach that I'll outline here is you should probably be using constants for these random numbers. So if you change them in one place, it should change them elsewhere. So let's create a struct in here called constants, and we'll just call this padding, and we'll say CG float, it's 2. And let's go ahead and use this padding. So let's see where it went. So right here, we're going to say constants.padding, same, whoops, same for here. And then this one should be constants.padding times 2. And now we can just change this one number up here and it'll affect everything. So let's make this 4. And let's go back to that profile view controller and hook up things over there as well. So height for this particular header seems to be too high in general. So let's see where we're returning the height. So it looks like we're returning the height here. This is the section for tabs. We're seeing the height is 65. Let's see what 50 looks like. And go ahead and hit Command R. And it's starting to look a little better. I still think there needs to be more padding here, so we're going to be OCD about it and go change this even more. We're going to try 8 and see what that looks like. What's important to keep in mind is you want to make sure the tap area is also suitable. So if the user can't really tap it, it becomes kind of problematic. I also think there should be a divider line up here, but we'll do that later. For now, I think this is starting to look better. Let's hook up the actual delegate. So back in the profile view controller, in the function that actually creates and returns the header, which is this guy right here, where we cast it as this tab collection reusable view, we're going to say this dot the delegate property we added, which is our custom delegate, is self. Now we're going to have those conform, similar to what we did for the profile buttons up here for the header. So we're going to add an extension to profile view controller. And that's not what we want. Profile view controller. And we're going to basically have this conform to the delegate. And I'm going to be lazy and wait for the error, and then go ahead and hit fix instead of trying to type it out yourself. And basically, we're going to do a couple things in here. So for each of these, we want to basically reload collection view with data for both of these. But actually, something that we want to do that we can do internal to the view class is we want to change the highlight. Because it's already in the view, what we can simply do is we can keep that logic inside of here instead of making the view controller aware of it. So on the selected state, we've set it system blue, and when it's not selected, it's this light gray. So I'm going to say for it did have grid button, we're going to say grid button, what did I call it? Grid button dot tint color, make sure that's a correct property, tint color is going to be system blue, and the tagged button dot tint color will be a light gray. And similarly, we're going to do the inverse in here. Whoops, and this one is going to be system blue, and this one's going to be light gray. Hit Command R, and that should just about set up the UI for most of our profile things. So we can tap these and they do in fact now switch. I don't know if it's just me, but this looks visually slightly to the left. Maybe I'll double check that later on. But right now it's not reloading our data. We will do that in a minute. Let's see, what else? So these are all hooked up. Tapping these follower and following is still lagging. So let's go to that list view controller I mentioned. I think is an other in general right here. Let's go ahead and delete this commented out code. And let's simply say view.background color is system background. And let's see, what else do we want? Whenever we create a list view controller, we probably want to provide some data. So we might want to add a custom initializer and call it data. We'll just say strings for now, since we don't have a different model in mind, but this is what we're going to show in our list. And we're going to say data is a collection of strings. We're going to say super init nil nil. It's going to start complaining that we need the other initializer. So I'll hit the error and hit fix, and that will bring that guy in. And the list view controller is a generic controller we're going to use to display any list, as the name implies. So this is going to have a table view on it. But before we even set that up, the places where we're using the list view controller, we're going to have to change the initializer. Now, I just did a project-wide search. You can hit Command-Shift-F and do this. Super handy in large projects. You guys should definitely get comfortable with it. So we're going to make sure we use data, and we'll simply pass in a couple names. And maybe in this video, we'll set this up, this controller's UI, since it's fairly simple. And then let's also find that other one, which is actually right below it. So we're going to do this. And let's go back to that data, that list view controller. And if it wasn't apparent already, I'm trying to get through a lot of the UI, and then hooking up the data from Firebase is fairly simple over here. So I'm waiting to do that in the end so we can properly talk about data flow and thread safety and all that good stuff. Also, designing UI is kind of fun. So that's why we're doing that first. So we're going to create a private table view in here in the list view controller. It'll simply be a table view, UI table view, and we're going to create it in an anonymous closure. That's kind of a tongue twister. So we're going to do that. We're going to go ahead and return that guy right there. And we're going to want to register a cell in here. So right now, I'll just register a basic table view cell. But we're going to want a custom cell like we've been doing for basically all of our views. And in view to load, we're going to want to go ahead and add this as a subview. We're going to want to add the table's delegate and its data source. And let's see, we are going to want to extend this controller to conform, list view controller to conform to the table delegate and data source. And basically we're going to say number of sections, which we don't really need since it's implicit, but we'll say 1. Number of rows will be data.count, data.count. Again, data is the collection that's coming into our initializer. Cell for row at index path, we're going to go ahead and dequeue a cell with the identifier we used to register said cell. And we'll simply just assign its text label for now, so we can actually go ahead and see it rendered. So we can make sure it's there. And let's see, we also want did select cell. No, did select row and index path. And we're going to say table view, deselect it, and true. And basically, whenever you have a follower list open, when you select the row, we should go to that user's profile. And there should also be a follower button on the cell, which we're going to use a delegate to do. So in this case, go to profile of selected cell. We're going to pull the model out of data, which again is just a string for now, but this should be compiling now, hopefully. And the one thing I forgot to do in here is we should probably set a frame to our table view here. So go ahead and override view did layout subviews and call super on it. And here we're going to say the frame of this is the entirety, whoops, is the entirety of the screen. So view.bounds, go ahead and hit Command R. And let's see what we've got going on. So profile, let's hit this, and awesome. So we've got our 4 cells showing up. What they should look like is a circular image here, username, possibly, I think their name is above it on Instagram, and like a button here for either follow or unfollow based on whatever that model provides. So yeah, that is basically how this is going to look. And let's actually go ahead and create that custom cell since we're already talking about it, and it's fairly simple. So under views and cells, let's go ahead and create a new cell. So file, new cell, right click that, a new file is what I meant. Cocoa touch class, UI table view subclass, and we're going to call this user follow table view cell. We don't need a nib, we'll do it programmatically. Go ahead and create this guy by hitting enter twice. Let's get rid of this template code. We're going to start off with a static identifier, which is going to be a string we're going to use to register said cell. We're going to override the initializer and call super, passing in the properties, the parameters. We're going to say content view clips to bounds is true. And we're going to start adding our subviews. So we are going to want a couple subviews. First one is going to be profile image view, which is that circular image I mentioned. So this is going to be an image view. We're going to go ahead and return it. And in here, we're going to say aspect ratio, or rather content mode, is going to be scale. Let's see, why is it complaining? We need parentheses here, otherwise autocomplete for Xcode decides to freak out and not work. So scale aspect fill. And what else do we want in here? I guess we don't really want a border. We'll see how it looks without it, otherwise we'll add it. And we also want a few other things, so let's copy and paste this. We're gonna want 2 labels. So I'm gonna say name label, UI label, UI label. And let's call this a label so it's not misleading. Label.number of lines will be 1. And I guess the name label should be kind of bold. So we're going to say label dot font is going to be system font. And we just want the one with a weight. So I don't know if I can get rid of the size. I think we also have to provide that, unfortunately. Yeah, we need the one with the size. Let me actually try that again. Yep, we definitely need the one with the size of size. Of course, it's not going to work with autocomplete because when does Xcode decide to be helpful? So of size is going to be 17 and the weight is going to be semi-bold. And let's copy and paste this down below. And we're going to say this one is username a label. And this is going to be regular, same size. Maybe we'll bump the size down just a smidge to have a slight visual difference. And then we also want a button in here for follow or unfollow, and that'll be configured based on whatever the model passes in. So we're gonna call this follow, let's just call it, I was gonna call it follow unfollow, but let's just call it follow button, UI button, button, and we're gonna say button, button, and let's see, we always want Let's see, what do we want? The background color and the text color. The title color will be different based on what it looks like, follow versus unfollow. So let's not configure that here. And that should be good to go for the views that we need. So we're almost at time for this video, but let's go ahead and at least add all our subviews, and maybe I can cram in laying them out. So add subview, we want the name label, the username label, the follow button, and what's the last one? We want that profile image view. We're going to want to override layout subviews and call layout subviews. And we're also going to want a prepare for reuse override. And this one, we're just going to nil out everything. So our cells being dequeued are performant. So the image of the image view will be nilled out. The name labels text will be nilled out. The username's lit text will be nilled out. And the follow button, we're going to say set title will be nil for normal. We're going to change its background color as well to be nil, since those are the two things that change with this button. And we're also going to get rid of the border, because when it's in the unfollow state, we're going to have a border. So follow button dot layer dot border width, we'll just say is 0, and that'll basically have it not show up. So that's probably sufficient. We'll do this in the next video because I know it's going to get super long, as is what always happens. But we're also going to want public func configure with a model. Keep that a string for a second. We'll create that model in here. And finally, we're going to want a delegate. So we're going to create a protocol. And this is going to be did tap follow unfollow button. The reason I called them both here is reading this in the view controller will be very misleading if I just leave it as follow. And we're going to pass in the model in here like so. Make this conform to any object. Otherwise, you cannot have it be a weak property. And go ahead and create it as a weak var delegate of that protocol type, optional. Reason it's weak is so we don't cause a memory leak with too strong references. And hit Command B, make sure it's compiling. Looks like we've got an issue in here somewhere. Looks like we need to bring in the other required initializer. That's simple. Hit the error and hit fix. And looks like we're compiling. So we're going to do the model, the layout, and we'll do that stuff in the next video. But the super last thing that I'm going to do is if you go back to your list view controller, again, Command-Shift-O for this prompt. Actually, we're in it already. Instead of registering a random UI table view cell to your table, we're going to use the one we just created with the respective identifier. And in cell for row, we're going to say, again, our cell.identifier as our cell. And the reason we cast it, of course, if you have forgotten, is so we can call configure with the model. Model's a string right now, but we're going to go ahead and change it. That said, I'll probably wrap up here, so make sure you hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Comment down below with any questions, errors. This video is a little faster than my other ones, and the reason is I want to keep this series reasonably short, so I'm already kind of foreseeing 30 plus videos, so we're only on one tab right now. So I'm trying to make it reasonable. Notifications are pretty simple, Discover is pretty simple. Camera will be a whole lot of fun. I really enjoy camera things. And the feed is going to be fun too. So hit subscribe, hit like, get excited for the next part. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys later.